Hello guys, a little bit of a warning before I start. I have a bit of a sore throat, so if I do start just coughing on my own mucus that I am bringing up, or sound a bit more croaky, nothing to worry about, just carry on with your day as normal. But yes, another crew video. Now, I've been I've watched quite a few reviews of the game. Well, I didn't watch the reviews before I started playing the game, and that is a fucking wipeout. I I played the game, I've played the story, I've completed the story, I spent quite a few hours of the game, and then I watched some reviews from all the people. And from what I can gather, they all seem to love the scope of the game, which I do agree with them. The scope of this game is brilliant. But they have pointed out quite a few flaws. Some of them I agree with, others I disagree with. But ultimately, these are my impressions of the crew. Now, as I was saying earlier, the size and scope of this game is just unreal for a racing game. A racing MMO. I never thought I'd see the day when this would happen. I would have preferred, honestly, continental Europe, because continental Europe has the more winding roads, especially in the Alps. The Alps has some brilliant roads with no cars, no traffic on. Admittedly, I do like street racing, weaving in and out of traffic, trying to find the best line, but ultimately I do love pushing a car to its limit on the good alpine roads, like really pushing it mechanically, what it can do, how it can handle, what it's like under braking, what it's like under acceleration, especially the short and long term bursts of it. Now, I did actually like the story. A lot of people were writing off the story. I quite liked it. Now here's why. Because it's an actual story. Unlike most modern racing games, it actually decided to put a narrative in there. Now for racing games, that's quite a risky move because a lot of people play street racer games like Need for Speed. Me, I prefer the classic Need for Speed games. So Most Wanted, Carbon, Underground 2. I didn't get to play Underground 1, but I prefer all those games. But I'm sorry you have to watch that bit of dirty driving. Anyway, let's move on. A lot of people were saying that the story's... I think the story's fairly good. Now, the problem with racing games is that with the Fast and Furious movies, because the Fast and Furious movies were quite a cult hit, or not a cult hit, more of a cultural hit, and like it really did romanticize this idea of street racing. It's always been a problem to say street racing games to sort of create a good story because even though Fast and Furious never really made any games, they've never actually sat down and made a proper game. They made like a mobile game. They never actually made a proper game in my eyes, apart from mobile and arcade. It's like the stories in the games have to compete. Now, before this game, the best story I played was Most Wanted. Yes, the story's cheesy. Yes, in a real world, crap like this wouldn't go the way it did in Most Wanted game. And I'm not talking about the 2012 remake, not that garbage. I'm actually talking about the 2006 classic. But anyway, the story was brilliant. And though I think the story is good, it's just not brilliant. Like the concept is there itself is good. Spoiler alert, if you're actually playing this game, you want to find out the story by yourself, turn off the video now, or skip ahead. I'm not sure how far. If I can find a way to put in a timestamp, I will put in a timestamp. But anyway, the story stars you as Alex Taylor, played by Troy Baker. His brother is Dayton Taylor, the founder of the 510 Motor Club, a sort of little underground street racing scene in Detroit. One evening, you're being chased by the cops, you manage to lose the cops, you take part in a big race to get some money, to win big bucks, you win. They get pulled over after the race by your brother Dayton, tells you, can you drive me to a meeting? You drive to a meeting to meet this low-ranking member called Shiv, who then kills him, and who's been working with a dirty FBI agent named Coburn, frames you for his murder, then Shiv takes charge of the 510 Street Racing Club, turns it almost into a cartel, like making the 510 specialize in weapon smuggling, drug smuggling, smuggling dirty money over borders from different regions of America, even down into Mexico. Unfortunately, you never get to go down into Mexico, or even up north into Canada, which is a shame, but oh well, I'll live with America. Now, the story is, you've been in prison for 5 years. A special FBI agent who's trying to take down Coburn, called Zoe, says, right, work with us. You help us take down Coburn, we will help you get Shiv. And so, you you complete story missions, you go across the different sections of the United States, so the East Coast, the South, the Mountain States, and the West Coast. You go to these different places, and to be honest, the story actually had me, like, I was actually attached to the story, like, not fully emotionally attached, but, like, I was attached to the point where I wanted to play the next story mission to find out what happened. The cutscenes in the game, graphically, in my eyes, are beautiful. And with Troy Baker's voice acting, it does level them up. However, some of the voice actors do drop down a bit, like the character Omar. I think they wanted to try and get, like, a Persian man who sounded a bit more American. And in some lines of dialogue, for me anyway, it's almost like he sounded a bit French. Ubisoft. You have a game set in France during the Revolution, yet none of your characters have French accents. Yet to me, in a couple of cutscenes, or a couple of pieces of dialogue with this supposedly Persian character, he sounds a bit French in my eyes. Strange? Now, what has annoyed me about the game is, like, different sections require different spec of cars. So allow me to explain. In the Midwest, you start with street racing cars. You go down to the East Coast, you get dirt spec cars. Go down to the South, get performance spec cars. Go to the Mountain States, get raid spec cars. Go to the West Coast, you get circuit spec cars, which I'm driving in right now, the Dodge Viper, which you can get from Uplay for 100 points. But anyway, this is the circuit spec model. Now the problem is, it's like, I feel they ordered it the wrong way. Like, LA, Fast and Furious, surely there should have been street events, or street racing events, like actual races that forced you to use your street spec cars in LA. But no, there's none of that. There is none of that. That's really annoyed me, because it's like Fast and Furious, both the first one and the fourth one centers around street racing. Both take place around the West Coast area, although Fast and Furious 4 does sit along is LA, then Mexican-American border. But the first one, the first Fast and Furious, that's all about street racing in LA. I wanted to see some kind of homage to that, but nope. Nope. Had that dream crushed. And even in Miami, although Miami I can put up with, because you can make your performance spec cars look like your street spec cars. So I just made my Nissan Skyline GTR look like the street spec one, which I tried to make look like the one Paul Walker used in Fast and Furious 4. So I could get away with that. Now, graphics. Cars in this game, like other NPC racer cars, and your car, to me, looks great. Some cars that you drive past, like just civilian cars, they look good for civilian cars. They actually use real model cars, which is brilliant. The landscape, roads, and the environment close to you look good in my eyes. But it's when you begin to look further back, when you begin to really look over the draw distance, I do find there some muddy textures and it just doesn't look right to me. Now, one thing I do have to talk about quite a bit here for 3 minutes is the multiplayer. The multiplayer, I don't know what's going on with it. Here's the problems I find with it. Right, there's two sections you could have. You could have PvP, faction versus faction event. So you choose a faction quite early on in the game, one of the 5-10 factions, then you stick with them at certain points you can change, or you can change at certain intervals. Or you can stick with your faction that you first start with, the first faction you pick. Anyway, it's so annoying because those events take forever to load and you need 8 players to play those events. Now PvP events, where it's free for all, those are fun, however, connection can be a massive issue. It's so annoying, like, you have to pray to whatever religious deity you want to pray to, or if you're not religious, you just have to hope that everyone in the lobby has a superb connection, because you'll see people lagging about, you know, you'll have those instances where, like, they're clearly in front of you, but because of the lag and they may break, the lag will take forever to compensate, then suddenly, boom, they're right in front of you, hard on the brakes, which is annoying. And the fact that this game requires you to stay connected all the time to the internet means you can't just play the single player event, which is annoying. But it is an MMO driving game. So those are my few little impressions of the crew. Let me know what you think if you've actually played the crew. We are coming towards the end of this race, and I have clearly smoked the competition in my Dodge Viper. And until next time, guys, I will see you in the next video, and I wish you goodbye as we've crossed the line. I'll see you, man.